Hello and welcome to this part of my two-part series on why Game of Thrones fans should already be checking out The Wheel of Time. In this video, I'm going to explain how The Wheel of Time contains 5 of the elements we love most about Game of Thrones.
For me, those things were unforgettable characters, endless theory fodder, a world that felt real, enough of an investment to make the show look awesome, and some amazing talent.
And if, like many fans, you're still feeling a little bit burned by the ending of Game of Thrones, be sure to check out my other video in this series, where I will explain why I think The Wheel of Time will be able to address the 5 most common criticisms Game of Thrones received throughout its run. I'm going to approach this as if you are already a fan of Game of Thrones, and so I will spoil the heck out of that series, but not yet familiar with The Wheel of Time, which I will not spoil in this video, though I will give some general details. If you're already a Wheel of Time fan, please share this with anyone you're trying to convince to read the series and watch the show, and check out my other very spoilery Wheel of Time videos for yourself.
The Wheel of Time is a 14-book epic fantasy series written by Robert Jordan and completed by Brandon Sanderson after Robert Jordan's death in 2007. Currently, there is a TV series of The Wheel of Time in production for Amazon Prime Video.
And although no TV show may ever match the cultural phenomenon that was Game of Thrones, if you're looking for your next obsession, I believe The Wheel of Time could be it. For me, my favorite part of Game of Thrones is its characters and how they evolve over the course of the series. It's fascinating to me that I can actually begin to care for a character that I originally hated.
Exhibit A, Jaime Lannister. Guys, he threw this adorable kid out the window, and we still end up rooting for him to be the hero anyway.
And the flip side of that is that even characters we love can do heinous things and really challenge us in that direction. It's not like the show expects us to be sympathetic to everyone all the time. Game of Thrones has evil characters who are not redeemed. And yet they're clearly human and three-dimensional the vast majority of the time. For example, I'm really not sympathetic to Cersei even when we're given her point of view, but she is clearly human and fully realized as a character, and I can appreciate that. The Wheel of Time is absolutely jam-packed with characters who have enormous arcs throughout the series. Comparing who the characters are at the beginning to who they are at the end is amazing, and we get to see all these stages of evolution throughout the series. The good thing here is there are so many characters with the ability to pull you into the series. I know so many Wheel of Time fans who actively dislike one or more major characters but still love the series. And all of the major characters are really shades of gray, to be honest. They might be heroic, but that doesn't mean they're not going to do something wrong and challenge you. They are. Another of my favorite thing about Game of Thrones, and an aspect I would argue made it into the cultural phenomenon that everyone was talking about, is the way it inspired us to theorize about what was going to happen and what the different mystery elements of the show meant. Whether it was trying to figure out who was going to live or die or end up on the Iron Throne, or the more supernatural elements like the Night King's origin, there was no end to the speculation, and we discovered that people talking about a show can be as much fun as actually watching it. As for The Wheel of Time, a complex 14-book-long series is of course going to give you plenty of material for theorizing. And the fact that Robert Jordan was such an incredibly detailed planner means that a lot of times that theorizing is going to lead you somewhere interesting. The premise of the world is built on the idea that there was an enormous amount of knowledge lost after an apocalypse that happened millennia ago. And so there's a lot of supernatural stuff that the characters themselves have to figure out in their attempt to save the world. Then there's all the different scheming human factions to try to figure out what they're up to. And prophecy takes a lot of different forms in the Wheel of Time and is very much embedded in the story, so that's going to provide endless theory fodder. Even though reading the books ahead of time would obviously impact this element of it when it comes time to watch the show, I still highly recommend reading the books if you're a book lover and getting to experience it that way. Basically, whether you've read the books ahead of time or not, the show is going to give you a lot to enjoy. And another alternative to consider would be to read the books along with the show, if that appeals to you. An essential element to any fantasy series is the world it exists in has to feel distinct from our own, but also fully realized, so that it becomes a place we feel we can immerse ourselves in. Game of Thrones managed to do this in several ways.
Think about the map of Westeros and how easy it probably is for you to picture it.
The way they incorporated it into the opening of the show was brilliant, making it a portion of the show that you actually wanted to watch and making it all feel that much more real. Early in the series, we spend more time on the geography of Westeros and how it impacts the cultures of the Seven Kingdoms.
How much of northern culture is affected by the proximity to the Wall, the harsher winters, and their relative isolation? How much of the Ironborn, for better or worse, has to do with the lack of resources on their rocky island?
In this way, the different cultures, religions, and mythology are woven in, along with the magic of the world, to the development and purpose of the story. In the Wheel of Time, you have all of this and then some, including a wider range of cultures and a more fully realized magic system. One of the things that allowed Game of Thrones to be so great is that it earned a budget to spend on effects, sets, costumes, music, etc. Do I even need to explain this? You can't do epic fantasy well without making the fantasy elements look as real as possible.
You know, unless you decide to cut those fantasy elements to appeal to moms or NFL players. Oh, whoops, wrong video. More on that here.
Since everyone is trying to make the next Game of Thrones, any production company that has its hands on a title they think might be it is willing to throw some money at it. Full disclosure, we do not have exact budget figures for Amazon's The Wheel of Time, but we do know that Amazon has been spending a lot of money on its Lord of the Rings project, like record-breaking numbers. They have the money to do it, so it's no stretch to think they might do the same for The Wheel of Time as well. They don't know which of these has the best chance to become a hit, so putting their best into each makes sense if they can, and they can. My money would be on The Wheel of Time, obviously. And if money is spent, The Wheel of Time has so many elements that could look incredible on screen, including fully realizing the magic system and some creatures that could make the White Walkers look cute. Lastly, would Game of Thrones have been the show it was on just its material? Of course not. We needed the most talented people to bring it to life. The cast of Game of Thrones is well known now, but when they began, many of them were complete beginners or virtual unknowns.
The show took a chance on talented young people and gave them the opportunity to grow into their roles. They also anchored the cast with some experienced actors as well, the most well-known being Sean Bean and Peter Dinklage.
And this strategy seems to have paid off brilliantly. I would argue it's hard to find a weak link among the major actors on the show. Whatever you may think about the material at the end, I believe the actors did an incredible job, and this perhaps goes even more so for the production staff, who created a show that looked and sounded beautiful. The Wheel of Time seems to be on a similar path when it comes to hiring, from what we can judge so far. They've chosen relative unknowns for the young roles at the center of their cast, so there's only so much we can say about their work and potential. But we do know that a ton of people were looked at for these roles, so they had the opportunity to choose the best.
The 5 core characters of Egwene, Rand, Perrin, Nynaeve, and Mat are a little bit older than a lot of the characters were in Game of Thrones at the beginning, so there's a little bit less uncertainty about how they will grow into their roles.
Adding to the unknowns we have so far are 2 more established actors heading up the cast.
Rosamund Pike, known for Gone Girl, Die Another Day, Pride and Prejudice, and so much more, is the headliner.
This to me shows some confidence in the production, and she is apparently already deeply invested in the material and her character Moiraine, a woman on a mission, according to Rafe Judkins, the showrunner.
Daniel Henney, known for Criminal Minds, X-Men Origins Wolverine, and Big Hero 6, among others, will take on the role of Lan, Moiraine's sworn protector.
And he has shared on Twitter hints of some of his training regimens for the role. There's still a ton more of the cast that hasn't been announced yet, but looking at the production hires so far, there are a lot of really experienced people, and some of whom, like Rafe Judkins, the showrunner, were already fans of the material. So they bring their passion as well as their skill to the project. I hope I have convinced you to check out The Wheel of Time. If you want more, please check out the other part of this video series where I get into the biggest criticisms of Game of Thrones and how The Wheel of Time should be able to address those concerns. If you're a book lover, I highly recommend starting the series right now with Book 1, The Eye of the World. We don't yet have a release date for the series. Production started in September 2019 and was set to continue for 9 months, so there's plenty of time to get into the books while you wait. Season 1 would most likely cover all of Book 1 and possibly Book 2 as well. Please subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any content for the upcoming TV show, and I'll be sure to mark which has spoilers and which does not. Winter is still coming, and before you know it, you're going to be saying the last battle is coming as well.